The warrior's path is a journey of self-mastery, but the first and most challenging opponent every warrior faces is the ego. It's insidious, ever-present, and deceptive. It masks itself in many forms: pride, arrogance, insecurity, fear, and it thrives on distraction and confusion. To walk the true path of a warrior, you must learn to recognize the ego for what it is and confront it head-on. But how do you distinguish between the voice of the ego and the voice of your true self? How do you know when the ego is steering you off course, pushing you into unnecessary conflict, or preventing you from stepping into your full power? The modern warrior must understand this battle deeply, for it is in the quiet moments of self-reflection that the warrior learns to discern the difference. The nature of the ego, a double-edged sword. The ego is a part of us that craves recognition, approval, and power. It is the voice that tells us we are not enough, or that we must prove ourselves to the world. It is the source of our insecurities, our pride, and our need to control others. On the surface, the ego is the part of us that helps us survive, motivating us to pursue success, validation, and security. It drives us to achieve and to stand out. But the ego can also be the very thing that prevents us from achieving our highest potential. Socrates, in his dialogues, often spoke about the dangers of unchecked ego, calling it a false self. This false self creates illusions and prevents us from truly knowing ourselves. The more we allow the ego to drive us, the more we lose touch with our true essence. The ego wants to define us by external markers, status, achievements, and appearances. But a warrior knows that true power comes from within, not from what others perceive. Don Juan, the shaman from Carlos Castaneda's teachings, had a unique perspective on the ego. He saw it as a necessary part of the human experience, but also something that must be transcended. In his teachings, Don Juan often referred to the second attention, the ability to perceive reality beyond the ego's illusions. A warrior, according to Don Juan, must learn to see beyond the ego's projections and move into a state of heightened awareness where truth can be accessed without distortion. The ego's influence, the war within. The challenge for the modern warrior is to navigate the world without letting the ego control every thought, decision, and action. It's easy to think that the ego is something external, something we can simply battle and defeat. But the truth is, the ego lives within each of us. It is part of our consciousness. To overcome it, we must first recognize its influence and understand how it works. The ego feeds off external validation. It tells you that you are only worth something when you achieve success or gain recognition. It creates a sense of separation from others, positioning you as either superior or inferior. It causes you to compare yourself to others, fueling a cycle of envy, competition, and discontent. This constant striving for validation keeps you trapped in a state of anxiety and dissatisfaction. You are always chasing the next achievement, the next validation, the next step up the ladder. The warrior, however, recognizes that true peace and strength come not from external recognition, but from an internal sense of self-worth. A warrior understands that their value is not defined by others, but by their own integrity, their own character, and their own commitment to the path. This requires letting go of the ego's need for constant validation and embracing the stillness of the true self. Socrates and the self-examination. Socrates understood the danger of ego and the false self. His philosophy was rooted in self-examination, an ongoing process of questioning and challenging one's beliefs, actions, and motivations. This process, known as the Socratic method, is a powerful tool for warriors seeking to transcend the ego. By constantly questioning oneself, by stripping away assumptions and illusions, a warrior can begin to see themselves clearly. The Socratic approach to self-awareness involves asking the difficult questions. What do I truly want? What motivates my actions? What are my fears? What are my attachments? By digging deep into these questions, the warrior can uncover the layers of ego that obscure their true self. This is not a process of self-criticism, but a practice of self-liberation. The warrior seeks to strip away the false identities they have built for themselves, the masks they wear to protect their vulnerability, and the illusions they hold about their own worth. The ego often disguises itself as who we think we are or who we want to be. But when you strip away these layers, what remains is a pure awareness, a silent consciousness that is not defined by achievement, success, or failure. This is the true self, the self that exists beyond the ego's projections. The warrior's response: transcending the ego. To transcend the ego, the modern warrior must develop the discipline to observe it without being consumed by it. It is not about eradicating the ego, for it serves a purpose in the human experience. It is about learning to recognize when the ego is in control and making the conscious decision to respond differently. The warrior does not deny the ego's presence, but they do not let it define them. Instead, they cultivate awareness of their thoughts, their emotions, and their behaviors. They practice mindfulness, meditation, and self-reflection to stay grounded in the present moment, free from the ego's need to grasp, control, or manipulate. Through these practices, the warrior learns to observe the ego without being swept away by it. This is where Don Juan's teachings on the warrior's path become especially relevant. He taught that the warrior's true power comes from stopping the world, or the ability to suspend the normal flow of perception and experience reality from a higher perspective. When the warrior stops the world, they can see beyond the ego's distortions and experience life with clarity and insight. In this state of heightened awareness, the warrior is able to act from a place of truth, not from the impulses of the ego. The ego and the shadow, confronting the unseen. The ego is often linked to what Carl Jung referred to as the shadow, those parts of the self that we repress or deny. The shadow represents the darker aspects of our personality, the traits we are unwilling to acknowledge or accept. The ego keeps the shadow hidden, preventing us from fully integrating all aspects of ourselves. But in order to grow as a warrior, we must confront our shadow and embrace all parts of who we are. Don Juan's teachings on personal power emphasize the importance of facing the darkness within. The warrior must not shy away from their own flaws, weaknesses, and fears. Instead, they must confront them directly, without judgment, and integrate them into their being. This is a process of self-acceptance, of embracing the entirety of who we are, light and shadow alike. Only by confronting the shadow can the warrior truly step into their power. the ego and its attachments. One of the most powerful ways the ego manifests is through attachment. The ego attaches itself to ideas, identities, possessions, and even relationships. It tells you that your worth is tied to what you have or what you do. But the warrior understands that true freedom comes from letting go of attachments. To be truly powerful, you must be willing to release the need to cling to anything, whether it's a sense of identity, a material possession, or an outcome. This doesn't mean abandoning everything. Rather, it means cultivating a mindset of detachment where you are no longer defined by external circumstances. A warrior's true power lies in their ability to remain grounded and centered, no matter what happens around them. The warrior's strength comes from within, not from the outside world. The path forward, living beyond the ego. The path of the modern warrior is not one of fighting the ego, but of transcending it. It's about moving beyond the need for external validation and embracing the quiet strength that comes from within. The warrior's journey is one of self-discovery, self-awareness, and self-mastery. It requires the courage to confront the ego, the discipline to rise above it, and the wisdom to live in alignment with your true self. When you walk the path of the warrior, you no longer need to prove yourself to the world. You live with integrity, honor, and clarity. The ego may still rise from time to time, but you no longer allow it to control your actions. You understand that true strength comes not from fighting others, but from mastering yourself.